322 for an alarm.
6-2, I'll have a stop off on Chatwood in a minute. 1080 for marijuana production. We're going to be Lake Turnwood, west of Beach.
Really what's going on is that this is bigger than the Medical Marijuana Act. This is about democracy, this is about freedom, this is about your legislatures changing the law that has been voted for by a majority of the people. And now what you're finding is that a small group of people are trying to now push that law back and change it after it was done so in a lawful mean. They do not understand what's going on in the medical marijuana community. And what's more is they don't really see the types of abuses that are going on by law enforcement. You have a group of law enforcement agents that are completely eradicating these protections. Why? Because they don't like the law, because you don't believe that medical marijuana works for people, because you think that they should be taking prescription medications instead, or because they don't look like what you think a medical marijuana patient should look like. And it's not for anyone but them and their doctor to decide what kind of medicine they're going to use. And once that's decided, they should have access, safe access, consistent access to the best medication that they and their doctor have decided that they want to use. Instead, we're finding just the opposite. You're having legislatures dictating who should be taking the medicine. You're having legislators dictate what doctors should do before deciding who should take what particular medicine. Why? Because it's cannabis. Yet here we are in 2011 trying to create laws that limit safe access to cannabis for people that deserve it. The people of the state of Michigan believe that sick people should be entitled to get marijuana to treat their condition. The bills that are being presented don't even acknowledge this. They're trying to eradicate something that the people of the state of Michigan wanted, and they're trying to keep sick people that deserve their cannabis, deserve their medicine, from getting it.
This is video recorded by the office of attorney Michael Komorn, who's also the president of the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association. He says it shows stuff seized from his clients and held by police. His clients paid him thousands to represent them, and after years of waiting, got their belongings back.
Why is the state engaged in this kind of activity? The idea that the government just takes it, and by the fact that they're possessing it, it becomes theirs, and the burden shifts to the owner of it to prove that the property is not guilty or that they acquired it in a lawful way, is against the grain of what we've learned and what citizens expect from our legal system.
Ron Hammond and his son John say they believe it is all about making money for law enforcement. When medical marijuana became legal, they applied for cards to be caregivers and patients.
Well, I thought everything was legal.
Everything that you're supposed to do, I followed all the weights and all the counts and everything like that, but it doesn't matter to them when they come in. They just take everything and say, gotcha.
Michael Komorn argues it hurts justice. He says he takes on clients who can't afford his services because their assets are seized. John and Ron Hammond say they believe they will be found not guilty, but in the meantime, they are being punished.
Bill Schuette led the charge against medical marijuana, and even after the will of the voters was decided and the support was enormous, he still continued to fight against the will of the voters, keeping patients from the medicine that they need.
A massive crackdown on marijuana traffickers as police move in and raid several homes and businesses and warehouses.
Police raid a home on Detroit's west side, turning the place upside down, searching for illegal drugs.
But the homeowner says that the officers targeted the wrong house.
This department's drug unit was actually under investigation, along with quite possibly some detectives and leaders, that some money was missing, that it could have in fact been misappropriated.
Detroit police raids officers in full tactical gear, racing up with high-powered assault rifles, with officers as backup.
Now, Detroit Police Internal Affairs are investigating a huge and dangerous mistake.
Yeah, cops staged a drug raid only to discover they were about to bust their own undercover officers.
It was clearly unusual to see evidence bags being taken out of a police headquarters building instead of into it. Evidence that investigators believe will support allegations of misconduct by Romulus detectives and officers.
Being allegations revealed against Detroit police narcotics officers as part of a federal lawsuit.
Then I saw the AK-47 on the back of her head. 6 men came in behind that and screaming and yelling, "Get on the floor, get on the floor." They did not say they were Detroit police officers. They took me and my wife in separate rooms, threatened us.
Sources say the undercover cops who were here last night are working what is called a push-off, where they can make arrests and seize vehicles that can generate revenue.
Civil asset forfeiture is a legal process in which law enforcement officers take assets from people suspected of involvement with crime or illegal activity without necessarily charging the owners with wrongdoing. Michigan's civil asset forfeiture laws are some of the most egregious in the country. In March 2010, the Institute for Justice released Policing for Profit, the Abuse of Civil Asset Forfeiture, the most comprehensive national study to examine the use and abuse of civil asset forfeiture, and the first study to grade the civil forfeiture laws in all 50 states and the federal government. Only 3 states received a B or better. Michigan received the lowest score possible, a D-. Americans are supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, but civil forfeiture turns that principle on its head. With civil forfeiture, your property is guilty until you prove it innocent. The report chronicles how state and federal laws leave innocent property owners vulnerable to forfeiture abuse. These laws encourage law enforcement to take property to boost their budgets. The report finds that by giving law enforcement a direct financial stake in forfeiture efforts, most state and federal laws encourage policing for profit, not justice.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Komorn. I'm a criminal defense lawyer. I've been practicing for about 25 years. I'm also the president of the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association. I want to thank the chairman and the Judiciary Committee and Representative Lucido for championing this important cause that, from my personal experience as a lawyer, has been quite brutal on the citizens of Michigan. The purpose of the law was to protect people from arrest, not create nuances that, exceptions that could pull people out of their immunity. And that is unfortunately what has been happening. You wouldn't see an increase in arrests of marijuana 14% every year and 15 million in proceeds when you have a state law that was intended to stop that behavior. I mean, the legislature in 2016 amended the law retroactively. I've never seen this before in 25 years of practicing law, retroactively to cure what the legislature has been unable to do, which is to protect patients from getting arrested. I mean, that's a declaration that the law has not worked with its original intention. And the statistics show it, because you've got an increase in funds and an increase in arrests. So the concept of that you're speaking of it being, Schedule 1 is absurd. This legislature just passed a law where they're going to receive tax money for selling these things that this argument would lead to that my client was possessing, and it's contraband. May as well be kiddie porn. I mean, that's the analogy.
Why do you think they started paying attention to you guys?
Because I got rid of a patient.
She wasn't happy.
Well, I went to the store, come back, and there's people running in and out of the house. And then I found out that they almost shot my girlfriend because she's hearing impaired. Because she was the only one in the house when they showed up.
Just medical marijuana growers, and we just have our patients, we have our cards, we're trying to do everything legal and right, and they just came in and destroyed our whole lives, pretty much. Talking with my lawyer, I said, can we get this thing moving along? Nothing's happening. They got a hold of everything. What am I supposed to do? He said, well, let's start rattling them a little bit and see if we can get them to release some of your stuff. As soon as we did that, that's when they dropped warrants out on us, which they didn't tell us about the warrants.
I thought everything was legal. How can you pay for the right to do it, and then they come in and say you can't? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, you have guns pointed at your face, and they put you down on the ground and, make you feel like a criminal. And for what, I have no idea. I was doing everything that the law said I'm supposed to do, so.
Your kids' toys, did they touch any of that stuff?
I did end up coming up with a couple Xbox games missing, and like Michael said, he said, go through all your stuff, go through your jewelry and stuff, look at all that stuff. I said, well, they took all my money. Like, I just cashed my paycheck.
I did too.
It was
Same
like
thing.
$900 in my pocket. They're like, we're taking that. I'm like, that was my paycheck, man. And they were like, yeah.
And that's all on record.
And then I had a little bit of money that my mom gave me stashed away in a little tiny safe, and they were like, "What's this?" And I'm like, it's a little bit of money that my mom gave me. It's not even $2,000. They're like, "That's drug money." They took that. I'm like, they're like, "What's in the safe? Open that safe." I'm like, "All right." So I opened up the safe. They're like, "Oh, you got guns in here." They were like, "Jackpot." I'm like, "Oh,
that wasn't
come
my
on."
property.
It wasn't even on that. It was in a whole different house.
Do you think people realize that the government can take your stuff and hold it for years without charging you with a crime?
I had no clue.
Were they asking you about anything that had to do with marijuana, or they're just asking you about the motorcycle?
That's it, just a bike.
What does that tell you?
They want money.
Did they seize your retirement accounts too?
Yep.
So, I mean, you got that, talk about where you got that money from, you know.
I worked for it. It's for my retirement.
So, it, you know, because they're supposed to seize assets that are connected to making money from drugs.
Nope, that all comes through my company.
What do you want to say to lawmakers? What do you want to see changed?
Play the game fair. That's why we have laws.
In Michigan, law enforcement receives all proceeds of civil forfeiture to enhance law enforcement efforts, creating an incentive to pursue forfeiture more vigorously than combating other criminal activity. The report says Michigan multi-jurisdictional task forces work extensively with district attorneys and police departments to forfeit property, resulting in more than $149 million in total forfeiture revenue from 2001 to 2008. Here's how policing for profit works. The federal government provides grants to drug task forces to go get drugs, but does not give grants to detectives who work to find murderers or rapists. Civil asset forfeiture laws allow cops and prosecutors to forfeit cash, assets, and property of anyone accused of drug or prostitution crimes. They don't have to obtain a conviction or prove in any way the defendant was committing a crime. Local law enforcers also keep all proceeds, sharing with federal agencies. This combination of free money with no consequences fosters a generations-long dependence on forfeiture and grant dollars in most, if not every, local Michigan police force. This dependency dictates enforcement to areas of profit, mostly drug and prostitution consensual crimes, rather than violent crimes with actual victims.
They threatened with over 40 years in jail for myself. For my son, it was about 20 years. And again, this is for the same activity that they're now licensing, the state of Michigan is licensing for. I know partially why it happened, because I was opening a doctor's office across the way on the other side of town. The city did not want me to do it. They said it wasn't acceptable use. But there wasn't anything in the ordinance or the code that said that it was not a permitted use. So I spoke with the city attorney, and she said, "You're not opening." Shortly thereafter, within a week's time, we were raided. When I was at the jail in Canton waiting to be booked, the lieutenant came over to me and she said, "You must be Amanda Jocelyn." And she held out her hand. I stood up to shake it. She said, "You're the one that wanted to open the office on the other side of town." I said, "Yep, that was me." And she said, "Well, I guess you got your answer."
Proponents see civil forfeiture as a powerful tool to thwart criminal organizations involved in the illegal drug trade. They also argue it is an effective method since it allows law enforcement agencies to use these seized proceeds to further battle illegal activity. The warrants executed in search of forfeiture often violate the civil rights of Michigan families who have no criminal intent.
You know, we still got to match up the cards with number of plants, or that's what our aim is. And I'll be clear with you, if we don't get that, we will get the search warrant and we will go about this differently. Obviously, we've done already 4 today.
It becomes arbitrary because when he shows you that he's got medical marijuana cards, it then warrants and justifies his ability to have the smell of marijuana, to possess plants, all the things that may have made you suspicious of a crime.
But possess a certain number of plants.
Yeah, but you don't.
Which is something that we would like to.
I understand, but you don't have any evidence that he's not in compliance, and in order to get a search warrant, you would have to establish that he's doing something illegal. If you know that he's allowed to have smell, then smell's not illegal. If you know that he's allowed to have, electric bills or the snow melting on his roof or whatever, then it's not illegal.
I guess why, if you're going to give him that advice, sir, why do you want to talk to me?
Because I was hoping you'd be reasonable in knowing that he's got medical marijuana cards. I don't think the act...
I'll tell you what, I gave you my position. I'm going to give you back to your client. You can advise your client however you wish, okay?
Why are drug task forces, why are SWAT teams still investigating our compliance with the Medical Marijuana Act? Why are Michigan drug task forces still obtaining warrants to kick in our doors and terrorize families and take whatever they want based on the probable presence of marijuana 8 years after the Medical Marijuana Act? We've been asking the wrong questions for a long time. So everybody needs to be asking themselves the following questions. Where are my local police resources being held? Like, how many detectives are assigned to the homicide and the violent crime squads? What kind of resources do we have directed to those? How many butts are in chairs doing research and going and getting the real bad guys? And how can we begin to have honest conversations about public health and safety, how the drug cops need to be redirected to these violent crimes, get them funding, and leave us alone, leave these families alone otherwise.
And I don't want to come off as as being totally anti-police, but the drug task forces are the ones that are bringing in $15 million this past year, $20 million in years past, $26 million I think in 2013-14, consistently. This is insane. There's no reason in the world that a budgeted state agency, after being given the resources to perform their yearly tasks working for the state of Michigan, goes out and then earns another $26 million. That is a machine. There's not that many businesses that do that in Michigan, right? But here they are. And what's the scheme? The scheme is they're just robbing citizens who don't get due process on nuanced technicalities. And I don't know, it's been rather a terrible time and a real shame to the state of Michigan, the way that they've handled this.